Hey everyone, thank you for the huge amount of support that we've received for the podcast. We truly appreciate it. We've received a lot of questions on how you can support the podcast, and really all we ask is that you subscribe and rate wherever you're currently listening. It helps a ton. I hope you enjoy this week's podcast.
I already knew that something wasn't okay. He wasn't doing good and he wasn't breathing on his own anymore.
This episode of Wildlife Podcast contains adult themes and subjects that may not be suitable for all audiences. Listener discretion is advised. Stigmata, or its singular form, stigma, in Christian tradition, refers to the marks left on the body of Christ during crucifixion. Physical wounds caused by physical trauma. Today, more commonly, a stigma is defined as a mark of disgrace associated with a particular circumstance, quality, or person. The contrast of these two definitions for the same word is palpable. One describes physical wounds and torments inflicted upon oneself by others. The second describes a mark of disgrace. Every one of us has something we're ashamed of, something we hope will get buried with the passage of time. Most of us, myself included, are deserving of those stigmas, or at the very least, possess some responsibility for those marks, whether by a lapse of judgment or a decision brought on by a tainted motive or our own self-interest. But there are societal stigmas given to those who did not willingly participate in their acquisition, those who have suffered most by the event for which the stigma was given, but in the end are left to bear the weight of their burden alone, cast aside and made to feel ashamed by an event life has unwillingly thrusted upon them, silenced by a society too uncomfortable to look grief in the face. But when a survivor speaks, they begin to break down those stigmas and challenge society's norms. They begin to take control and change the narrative of their story, and we, alongside them, begin to heal. Everyone you meet has a story. This is Aisha's.
Hi, my name is Aisha. I'm from Lake Zurich, Illinois, born in Bolivia, raised in the Dominican Republic. My parents both were missionaries, and they did a lot of work with churches in third world countries, I guess, for lack of a better term there. I have two sisters and one little brother. I'm the oldest of four. Growing up with parents that were like super involved with what they did and with like people and always working with people and in and out, and it just all the stuff that they were doing, it really did leave me with this responsibility to take care of my siblings, kind of be the mother figure for them in a lot of ways. I mean, we leaned on each other a lot, especially me and my second sister both kind of took on those roles as caregivers in a way for like little younger two, but that was like super early on. I think I remember being maybe 10, 11 when I started like really kind of taking on a lot more responsibility with like making sure everybody was like brushing teeth and getting lunches and stuff like that. So definitely took on that maternal role pretty early in my life. My husband is Andy. I've been married with him for 5 years this May. I met Andy at church. Once my family moved back to the States, I was kind of homesick and didn't know a lot of people, so got plugged in right away at a church that had like a duolingual, they were like a Spanish service. And so I felt like that would be awesome for me to kind of take care of that homesickness. Started volunteering. And so Andy is actually the pastor's son. And I met him through his dad because we found out randomly that we share the same birthday and decided on a whim to celebrate it together that year since I didn't have many friends. And so his family invited my family over and we had a joint birthday party and then became really, really good friends. I want to highlight friends because there really wasn't anything else for the next year. He totally friend zoned me. But it was awesome because I think being able to know him as just a person without any kind of romantic involvement there really helped me to get to know him in a way that I think if we had been dating or all of that would have been, I don't think it would have been the same. I think getting to know him as a person and without any pressure for anything else or impressing him or anything like that, or him impressing me, I think we really got to know each other at a deeper level, which I think is key to us later on in our journey together. I think I was definitely interested in him first. I knew of him even before I met him, and he was such a mystery that I think that part of that intrigued me and I wanted to know. I definitely thought he was very attractive as well, but I think the mystery part of who is this guy, and he seems like he's never really around, but I want to know him, caught my attention. So I think I was definitely interested from the get-go. He's a big commitment guy, so he needs to be 100% sure before he commits to anything. And so that's why he says it took a while for him to make it official with us and everything. So dating was also not very conventional. We did a lot of long distance. His family decided to move to California to start a church out there. And so that just meant a lot of FaceTime, a lot of texting, and eventually I did go out west as well to finish school. Was there for about 2 years, graduated with a degree in communication studies. Then kind of as couples do when things are getting serious, we decided that marriage was the next step. It was a beautiful wedding in the Dominican Republic. It was intimate. It was about 30 people, but super awesome. And then, married life started, and it was awesome. We had a really great time. Decided to move back to Chicago. Things are going really great, smoothly. We're having fun, and then decided, hey, we want to have kids. We want to start a family. I've always wanted to be a mom ever since I can remember, and probably because I had a lot of experience with my siblings, it just came really easily and naturally for me to be a mother figure. So was really, really excited to start my own family. I was the girl that would put pillows under my shirt and looked at myself in the mirror and pretended I was pregnant because I just really, really wanted to be a mom. So coming back from Seattle, I want to say maybe the weekend we got back home, I took a test and found out I was pregnant. And so when that positive test came back, I was beyond excited and just instantly dreaming about what it would be like and all the fun stuff that was ahead. The idea of having a little baby grow inside of me was incredibly exciting, and it was a very happy time for both me and Andy. And so we did one of those ultrasounds where you can tell earlier than the 20-week ultrasound. We found out it was a boy. Everything was going super well. I had the easiest pregnancy. I remember saying that over and over anytime anyone asked me about it. No complications. I was doing awesome, feeling great. Picking a name was, we had several options for boy and girl. Boy was definitely harder. We had three, actually, I would say probably two that were the contenders. It was Luca or Enzo. And Andy really liked Enzo. We wanted a short name because of Andy's last name is Hermosillo. So super long last name. We wanted something that would be kind of like short and sweet. And Andy really liked like the Italian sound of Enzo. And so when he said Enzo and he was so sure of it, I was like, yeah, like the more I heard it, the more I was like, yeah, that's the name. That's the name. The night that we decided for sure that his name was going to be Enzo, I made a little board with like those like letters that you can like make signs with. And I wrote his name and his due date. And then that Tuesday is when I went into labor. I think it was important for us to have his name before he was born. When it's your first pregnancy and there's no reason to, be concerned, the appointments are few and far in between, right? It's like every month until the last trimester, I believe, or something like that, or once a month. And then it gets like more and more as you progress. But at that point, my appointments felt like it was forever before I was being seen by a doctor, but everything was going well. We had our 20-week ultrasound and everything looked great. He looked great. I remember posting on Instagram a post saying like counted all his fingers and his toes. And then when I was 24 weeks, I started feeling discomfort in my abdomen, just like a mild cramp. Didn't give much thought to it. Thought, Braxton Hicks, those happen. Drank a lot of water to help with that. And then, they kept, they were persistent. I remember at one point at night counting, and it was like every 10 minutes I was feeling the sharp pain, but I was kind of in denial, thinking there's no way this is like contractions. I wasn't really informed either, I had never done any of the classes yet. That wasn't scheduled for another couple months. I was pretty naive at that point. Like, I really thought that there was no way that this was labor. I just tried to kind of ignore the pain. I kept telling myself, it's not that bad. But then the next morning, I remember it was a Tuesday. I told Andy, you know what, something is off. I think I'm going to try to get an appointment. He looked at me and he said, everything's going to be okay. Let go and let God. And he was off to work. And so I called the doctor. At that point, I had gone to the bathroom and there was a little bit of spotting. So I was a little more concerned because I knew that wasn't very normal. They were very good about giving me an appointment right away. I think it was like maybe an hour or so before the appointment. So my mom came over and then finally went to the appointment, and the doctor, greets me, says, let's see what's going on, checks me, and his mood went from like light and this is just, you'll see everything's okay, to very silent, and instantly it was like, you are 4 centimeters dilated and you need to go straight to Lutheran General. I'm gonna call my friend over there and I'm gonna let him know that you're coming, but we need to see if we can get you an emergency cerclage, I think it's called, to try to stop me from going into like further labor. Like, that moment for me it's still kind of like, I can hear ringing in my ears right now, just with like how that felt of like, what is going on? This isn't happening. And that feeling where you kind of think, okay, everything's gonna be okay. Everything's gonna be okay. This is just we're gonna be able to fix this. That's the feeling I kept having, was like, don't go to the dark, like something's gonna happen. Just try to stay positive. Called Andy, said, hey, this is what's happening. You need to come meet me at Lutheran General. And so he dropped what he was doing. He literally just turned around and got in the car and drove to me. In the meantime, we had arrived. I remember rocking myself up to labor and delivery saying, "Hi, I am here because I think that I might be in labor." I just remember it being such a surreal, like, this is not what I imagined this was going to be like. And so they kind of were like looking at me like with these like confused faces of, okay, let's get you into this room then and try to see what's going on. So they hooked me up to a bunch of stuff, do an ultrasound, and find out that Enzo was breached. So if he was coming, it wasn't going to be naturally. They were going to have to perform a C-section. Sitting there, getting a bunch of information that I couldn't process. I'd have 3 different nurses come in, tell me all sorts of things, and then technicians, and then doctors, and I literally have no idea what they said. When you're going through something like that, your brain isn't. I'm so glad my mom was there with me, because I definitely was not receiving any information. Pain was definitely getting more intense at that point. And then my water broke. When my water broke, I felt relief. There was no more pain. But it definitely meant that then things were getting a little serious. So the doctor at that point said, okay, well, we can't do the cerclage anymore. That's mute. But we can try to keep your baby inside for as long as we can. So they were able to like slow down labor and moved me into a bigger room and monitored me, and basically were like, we're gonna just ride this out and see how long we can keep Enzo inside. So at this point, there's no question that he was going to be born early, but there was a chance that we could stretch it out. During my time waiting for the delivery to happen, we had nurses that came in and even doctors telling me stories of like women whose water had broken early and they were able to stay in the hospital for 7 weeks before the baby was born, which definitely kept me holding out for hope, saying like, okay, this is possible. I went to the hospital on a Tuesday. My water broke that Tuesday, and then I was in the hospital Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and he was born on a Saturday. On day 5, something started feeling off. So I called the nurses and I said, hey, I think, something doesn't feel right. And I kept calling them in because I kept just feeling like something wasn't right. Sure enough, I was like, labor was picking up again. And so I had to make a decision, and it was like, okay, we gotta take you into the ER and we try to deliver Enzo alive. Again, like tons of things being thrown at you at once, a ton of information that you're not processing, and it's happening super quickly because they're prepping you for the OR and they're prepping Andy for the OR and they're rolling you out. It's like that scene of like, just you're laying and you're looking up and you just see like those fluorescent lights kind of passing as they roll you away. It was a crazy delivery because they go in, they have to put the anesthesia on. I was going to be awake for the whole thing. But I remember the anesthesiologist saying, we have to go in quick. So usually we wait 15 minutes to make sure that the anesthesia is working, but we just got to go right in. And I was like, okay. So they did. And I swear to you, I felt that first cut. So it was very real, and eventually it did numb out, but I could feel that first cut happening, and Andy's, sitting by my head, and he's just praying and saying like, everything's gonna be okay. Our son's coming. It felt like forever. I don't know how long a C-section usually takes, but I felt like I was in there forever. At some point, a nurse says that Enzo was born. You don't hear a cry. There's no way of knowing because he's so little. And they take Andy to go see him. And then the pain was I was feeling so much pain, and I was so uncomfortable at that point that they did end up giving me a little more pain medication, and then I was out. The next thing I remember is waking up, Andy kind of telling me, Enzo's beautiful. He's amazing. He's here. I remember feeling such a relief. Like, oh my God, okay, he's born. He's alive. And we're going to be okay. Like, we're going to make it through this. I didn't see him immediately. They took him right away to the NICU, took me to recovery. The NICU doctor came up and kind of talked us through like what could happen potentially. Tried to not give us too much hope, but also was saying things like, your son is looking really good. He's responding really well to everything that we've done so far. We're hopeful. And I hung on to those words. This is not how it was supposed to be, but let's go. What do we have to do? So I'm in my head, I'm already planning, like, we're going to be in the NICU for the next 4 months, having to come and go, and how are we going to do that? Like, I'm already planning everything. Then we're saying that I couldn't go see him until like 12 hours after my operation because I was still very fragile. Get me up, get me down there. I want to see him. But they're very strict, kind of gave up to that idea and was laying with my husband. We were both on cloud 9 because our son was born. And I remember that we sat and we just dreamed about our life with him. We couldn't wait to have our family together, and we were ready to take on whatever we needed to take on to get us there. And both of us were so happy and so complete. And something came over me and I said to Andy, you know, even if right now is all we have with him, it's enough. And if he needs to, if he needs to go to heaven, I think that I would be okay with that because I love him so much, but I know that there is someone who loves him even more than I do. And I can be at peace with that. I kind of just had this realization, like, he was never mine to begin with. And as I was saying those words, the nurses come in and say, we need to get you up and we need to go take you to your son. And I was so confused because I was like, wait, you said I couldn't see him until tomorrow. Said, let's change. Let's take you to see your son. I already knew that something wasn't okay. The doctor was there waiting for us, and she basically said that he wasn't doing good and he wasn't breathing on his own anymore. There was inflammation in his brain, and she basically said it's not looking good, and we don't think that there's anything else we can do, that they still needed our permission to stop trying to resuscitate him. So in that moment, they look at us and they're waiting for us to give them the okay. And I just kind of say, let me hold him, while I take through the last breath. And I put him in my arms, and he was so tiny, like half of my forearm. He was absolutely whole, like eyelashes, hair on his head, fingernails. And Andy and I were given a little room where we could kind of just be with him. And we spent like 4 hours just holding our baby and getting to kind of study his face and memorize like every inch of him. We let him go. We said that it was okay and that he would always be a part of our heart. And then that was it. That was the last time we saw him. The nurses were amazing, and they did a bunch of little mementos with him, handprints, feet prints, and we still have those to this day. And every year for his birthday, which is October 13th, we take him out and we look at them and remember him. After kind of the initial shock wears off, we both went into this like almost vegetative state of not doing much of anything but laying together, and we both found our ways to kind of survive the first couple of weeks after it all had happened, we had family fly in, and I remember that the greatest gift that they could and did give us was space to allow us to be in that state of numbness, really. And we didn't feel once like pressure to have to kind of be strong or face this head first. We really were given the space and time to kind of just go through it at our own time and our own speed. The greatest gift Enzo gave me was a new perspective, and it's an eternal perspective. Our time here on Earth is numbered, and we've always known that. Part of life is death, and we have hope in the promise that there is life after death and that we will be reunited with Enzo. And I call it like an eternal perspective. Really has helped me in this journey of healing. I would say I'm still healing. This happened 3 years ago, and I still am dealing with a lot of grief. But both me and Andy are able to rest knowing that this isn't the end of our story. It's just part of it. Really, the hope for me and the biggest part in my healing has been connecting with other women who have suffered the same losses I have suffered, and to see how we've come together and have supported each other and been there for each other in our lowest moments. Being able to go through something like this with someone who understands to some degree what I'm going through, I'm able to kind of not be the focus of my grief and my anger and my resentment, because how can I be so selfish to only be thinking about my pain when there's a lot of pain in the world. There's a lot of brokenness in the world. And for me, I think something that has strengthened my faith is the ability that we have to have empathy for one another and compassion and understanding, and then somehow that makes me believe in the hope of an eternal perspective, because that is something good that's coming out of the bad.
If you or someone you know is going through a similar situation, we implore you to get the help that you or your loved one deserves. Call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 1-800-273-8255. Through our research, we found several support groups to help those who are currently grieving the loss of a loved one. Please reach out to compassionatefriends.org. That's friends with an S.org. Or grieving.com, where you'll be connected to a support group. Wildlife Podcast is produced, hosted, and edited by me, Brandon Pennington, with music, sound design, and additional editing by Dan Semin. If you or someone you know has a story that you would like to share on the podcast, you can reach out to us directly at wildlifepod1@gmail.com. That's wildlifepod1@gmail.com. Thank you for listening to this week's episode. If you'd like to support the show, you can leave us a 5-star review on Apple iTunes, and remember to like and subscribe wherever you listen to the podcast. You can also follow us on Instagram and Facebook at wild-life-podcast to stay up to date on new episodes, bonus content, or just to send a message and say hi. Hey guys, stick around after this brief sponsor break for a few final thoughts on this week's episode. Hey everyone, Thanks for sticking around to the end of the episode. I want to thank Aisha for agreeing to come on and share her story. Candidly, Aisha is the first person I've interviewed for the podcast that I've known from my personal life. And while every person's story that I heard while doing this podcast has affected me in some way, this story in particular hit pretty close to home for me. I think this is such an important story to tell because unfortunately, stories of loss of a child and miscarriage are more common than I think most of us would like to think it is. And every mom and dad that go through something like that need to have their stories heard, to not feel ashamed or broken. I hope that everyone can learn something from this podcast, not just this story, but every story. We'll be back in 2 weeks with a brand new episode. Until then, please subscribe and rate us and follow us on social media at wild.life.podcast.